Okay, we're live, gentlemen.
Welcome everyone to our presentation today. It's impact of COVID-19 on church finance and donors. I'm Michael Sherrill. So let's get started. Your presenters today will be myself. I'm the founder of Julius Capital and Immacul.aw law firm. Been doing this for a while. In the course of the last 25 years, we've helped Catholic organizations obtain over $750 million of funding. On the line with us is David Skelding. He's the Director of Client Service. And as you can see from the bio in the background, David was with Christian Brothers Investment Service that had over $7 billion under management. Also an equity partner at a named law firm out of Chicago here. Prior to that, we also are pleased to have with us Mark Henry. In light of this Region 10 talk, I'm sure you know Mark well.
Hey, Region 10 brothers and sisters, good to see you all.
Here. And Mark is the president of the East Texas Catholic Foundation, and also with the Diocese of Tyler, the director of planned giving. Mark's going to give some insight into in the field use of what we're talking about today. And also Mark is a client of ours. So we've together with on some of these solutions. So the two firms, Julius Capital and Immacul.aw, what do we do? What we do is help our Catholic clients obtain funding. And it could consist of borrowing, financing, or philanthropy. But in particular, what we want to talk about today is, I think, a unique opportunity that we have some expertise in. It's called balanced philanthropy. It's a way to integrate some finance and structured giving solutions so you can allow your donors to give from their assets. And I think you'll be surprised to find that this form of planned giving actually can produce cash now in the short term, something you use to solve any funding gap you might have. There's a little more on our two firms below, but Julius Capital basically runs the numbers and some of the design for these campaigns or solutions. And we also can serve as planned giving campaign consultant to you. Immacul.aw provides credit facilities that work well with these solutions, and we can serve as planned giving counsel if that makes sense for your situation. But we're teachers at heart, so everything we do is to try to have you learn from us. Some things we've learned, do it yourself if you can, and kind of we can help you push the envelope to get to the next stage. So let's go further into this. People will ask, have you done it before? And have you done it with Catholic organizations? The answer is yes. There's a few of our Catholic clients on the board, some of them Region 10 members, Diocese of Austin and the Diocese of Tyler. So we have done it across the board with dioceses, also foundations. And I can just tell you that these solutions are working out in the field. We'll be able to share case studies with you or practical examples if you have questions. But we'll walk you through it today. So let's get started. Here's our presentation overview today. It's going to be in 6 parts, and I have them up on the board here. COVID-19, what we all probably know best about that is it produces an enormous funding gap challenge, cuts into your revenue. That is one well-known effect, and we're acknowledging Section 1. But in Section 2, we're pointing out this is a mixed blessing with some big upside. The factors that are driving COVID-19 also are giving rise to a tremendous structured giving opportunity. That is cash type generating gifts that fit in this situation that you can be able to use to solve your funding gap. So we'll focus on the opportunity side of COVID-19 as well today. In the third section, we're going to basically walk you through what sometimes is the most daunting part of this, is how to get started so that a donor will have a discussion about their estate with you. It'll be comfortable, and the result of that being they are going to share their balance sheet so you can work collaboratively in order to design a good gift. Now, the meat of our program is going to be in sections 4 and 5, where we're going to introduce to you 2 ideal structured gifts that are perfect in this environment and have a lot of attraction. We're going to break it down for you. In section 4, we're going to talk about the reinsured charitable gift annuity. You will also hear me call that a CGA at some point, but no, when I'm saying CGA, I mean charitable gift annuity. We might have heard about what those are. We're going to kind of break it down for you and also show you a new form of it, the reinsured charitable gift annuity. So in section 4, we'll talk about the reinsured CGA. In section 5, we'll talk about a second structured gift, a little bit newer, not as well known, but one part of it is, it's the charitable remainder unit trust, or sometimes referred to as a charitable remainder trust. You'll hear me refer to that as a CRUT sometimes, but what that is a charitable remainder trust. Now we're going to show you a new form of it, something that is much better than the traditional charitable remainder trust. It's called the donor bond CRUT, or the donor bond charitable remainder trust. So now we'll tell you that we leave a little time for Q&A in the end, but actually our plan is to have you ask questions during the talk. And David Skelding, who's somewhat moderating this for us, will tell you how you can ask questions, and it's our preference that you ask them during the talk, and David will get your questions in when we're on that slide.
Great.
So David, can you tell them how they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. So as Michael said, we will leave some time at the end for live questions, but we want this presentation to be as interactive and conversational as the format will allow. And so to that end, you'll see at the right of the screen, there's a toolbox, and there is a chat button that if you have a question during the course of the presentation, please press that chat button, and you'll be able to type into the chat box whatever question might be. I'll be moderating the chat function during the course of the entire presentation, and we'll be able to interject your question from time to time to get Michael's views and Mark's. So please use that chat function for questions as we go. And also, if you have any kind of technical difficulties, please use the chat function, and I'll be monitoring that the whole time. Thanks, Michael.
Well, let's get started. Section 1, COVID-19, the funding gap challenge. So we all know that COVID-19 has had a tremendous negative effect on finances. To put a number on it, there's some studies done that it's between 31 and 50%. Our work out in the field shows 40 to 50% with many of our clients, possibly trending up a little bit, but certainly in this range, and a long-term effect of this. It's not going to back immediately to where it was. So let's identify the problem, and rather than just knowing it's a number, we're going to, as we're apt to do here, we're going to put a number on it, and we're saying identify. We're going to show you that you should identify what your funding gap is, and then let's constructively try to solve it. How can we solve it? What's really needed here is some kind of new and self-funding kind of fundraising strategy to replace that revenue loss. I mean self-funding in that some of the new gifts will be incremental and actually will produce some kind of money that you can cover costs of introducing a program. That's what I mean by self-funding. Now, I also mean this is an incremental type of an approach. It's not cannibalizing your other type revenue streams. It's found money in a way, and we think that structured gifts are that kind of a found money situation. In a targeted structured gift program, in particular, the two gifts we're going to talk to you about can have an immediate but a targeted effect to solve your funding gap. Now, we talk about the funding gap, but what gap are we solving? We've got to put a number on it. We're big on that. Rather than just leave it out there and say, oh, it's down, we're going to try to put a figure on it in a very simple way and then design a program to actually solve the numeric gap that you think you have. If you don't start with a goal, you're going to hit. And so let's just call it what we think it is. Down below is a little bit of a grid that shows you how simple this could be, back of the envelope. But if you, it starts with just take your historical advancement revenue. That's the top line. This is an example of a diocese. It's a prototypical example, but not dissimilar in some ways to what we see out there. They're at a $7.5 million historical advancement revenue level. And you see that what we then do is basically apply an assumption about negative effect on COVID. And you see here, we're saying revenues may be down 40% due to COVID initially, and it might kind of ramp up, but still be down 5% at the end of year 5. If you actually compute those downsides, you're going to be able to produce how much you think your funding gap is. In this example, the funding gap is $7.5 million over 5 years, and we've identified what we think the gap is from year 1 to 5, with, of course, the biggest gap being right in year 1. So what's neat is a structured giving program, a targeted structured giving program to actually solve that specific funding gap. And you can hear what we're going to talk about is using just 2 structured gifts we'll talk about today, types of gifts that are designed to solve that $7.5 million funding gap. So as we move forward here, keep in mind this initial goal, because I'll use it as part of the example. You can see that the blue shaded gift is our charitable gift annuity, and it's the reinsured charitable gift annuity. So you'll see the reinsured CGA goal is $200,000 per year of net cash contributed. Now, the second yellow shaded gift is the donor bond into charitable remainder unit trust. It's a form of charitable remainder trust, but in more. And we're going to show you what a donor bond is and how you can work a donor bond with the traditional charitable remainder trust. And we have a solution called a donor bond CRUT. More on that later, but just know now it's the form of a charitable remainder trust. Now you can see from this goal, it's a significantly larger goal and number that's achievable there. So you'll see the yellow donor bond CRUT objective is basically bearing a big part of this goal. You also would notice they kind of work together in the charitable gift annuity is actually some of the funding for expenses related to this program, and you can use it for that. So you'll see your gap, the green, 7.5 million equals the total structured gift goal. So let's get started and do it. Section 2. Why do we say this COVID-19 is a structured giving opportunity? Well, we're going to give you the 3 factors here that lead to it being I don't think that we've seen a better opportunity ever for these type of structured gifts in the environment we're in right now. And why is that? First, your donors are absolutely worried about COVID-19 and how it affects their health care. It is top of mind, front of mind for them, and especially seniors. You hear things and concerns about rationing of care. We see headlines about end-of-life issues where you don't have access to possibly the sacraments. You might be in a nursing home or somewhere where your loved ones can't see you. It is top of mind. And also, a concern about euthanasia comes up in this kind of environment. So just know, factor 1 is donors are front of mind worried about this, especially your donors, your elderly donors. Factor 2 is, in light of that, they these donors want information about medical directives in estate planning. Medical directives so that they can control what might happen in a situation, and estate planning. Oftentimes, at this very point in time, this is the jolt to shake off the procrastination to do things that they know they've needed to do for a while. So right now, they're actually wanting to take action, which is usually the problem with estate giving. And I would say at this point, we have not seen donors more open to this discussion. Mark, you've been doing this for several years. Have you ever seen a bigger receptivity to this discussion?
I look at it as a heaven-sent opportunity to start a conversation, because it's something the Catholic community has always been concerned about. And you see the scary headlines in COVID-19, and it's a great way to start a conversation on estate planning, structured giving. So it's a tremendous opportunity. And that's what this whole area is about, is starting a conversation with your donors about something that they frankly aren't really excited about talking about, but they're worried about it. And this is a great opportunity to start that dialogue.
So I'll just say out loud what people think about estate giving and giving is it's kind of yucky. It's something that you don't want to talk about, and you don't want to be bringing it up. Hey, have you thought about what you're going to die? And in good times, maybe that is the case. It's a hard conversation. But in these times, they're actually asking for information, wanting to have this discussion. And I can say that it was never a better time, and it is an opportunity, and you really better seize it, because this is where the bulk of assets are. It's not in their current income cash gifts. It's in their estates and their assets. And we're going to show you a way that they'll openly want to talk to you about those assets. But as if those two factors weren't enough, we've got the monster of all factors. Number 3, historically low interest rates. Off the charts, down off the charts, low, 0% interest rates we're approaching. What does this mean? For borrowers, you're building a school or a church, and you got a big facility, or you already have a big loan out there. It's a historic opportunity to finance that at really unbelievable rates. Hard to believe. We've recently closed a bond transaction with our partner Coughlin and Company, the largest Catholic bond underwriter in the country, in Diocese of Austin. And for a school there, it was. We're going to show you this example later on. It was a $19 million financing, and the rate on that tax-exempt bond was 1.97%. It's below 2% fixed for 15 years, with a 25-year amortization, a tremendous. So it's a great chance for borrowers to buy at low rates. But on the flip side of that, for donors, especially your seniors, this is a real scary time, because seniors, and it's only prudent to do so, rely on fixed income. And, and maybe a year or two ago, they thought they might have been in good shape. But with these low rates, even very wealthy people with a big kind of estate or a big kind of retirement plan are starting to get a little skittish about whether they might outlive their money. Let's just, imagine this. David, being a millionaire sounds like it's a lot of money, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, it sure does. But
when David was with CGIS,
a year.
But when you put a number to it, David, $1 million just doesn't do what it used to do anymore. When you apply a 5% rate.
Yeah,
I mean, $1 million will give you $50,000 a year.
Exactly right.
That's pretty healthy.
And at these 1% rates that a bank is going to give you, you're spending $10,000 a year as a millionaire, and doesn't go very far.
So we see people, even millionaires, looking at. It used to count on 50,000 or so from that million in terms of fixed income. And now they're looking at it maybe being 10,000 a year. at 1%. So this means that they are absolutely starving for yield on their fixed income portfolios. They're looking for that, and they're looking at, rightfully so, the stock market is way too volatile to kind of try to make it up there. So the answer is, as we've laid here, a high yielding structured gift is a total win-win for both sides. The donors get the high yield they want, but don't forget, they also like the diocese and the church, and they can get the high yield and still help the church with these kind of gifts. But it does also provide some targeted cash to the diocese right now that can particularly solve a funding gap. So may sound strange, but solve a funding gap in year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 from a planned gift. Yes, doable. So let's show you how. Section 3. So here's the planned giving process we use. And I call it show me your balance sheet. That's the hopefully the fruit of this process. But it's basically wanting to result with donors looking through their balance sheet collaboratively with the diocese or the school and finding a win-win type of a gift that they can make. And the win-wins that we see are the structured giving. So we need to start off with just the picture. And as you know, we're big on putting numbers to things. But we just need to tell you again, as you probably heard many times, that your best donors are passing away at alarming rates. Remember, these are the people that already like you. Some of your best givers, your major givers, and also your elderly. They are not hard to convince at this point that they love the church. The thing is that we just don't have this discussion with them. And just to monetize or a feel for that, look at the chart on the left. This is the number of Catholics in the Region 10 diocese on this phone that passed away in 2019. This is right out of the official Catholic directory. You can see that there are some large dioceses. Look at Galveston, Houston had 3,900 Catholics pass away. And then you can see there's some smaller ones, like Tyler, 347 passed, according to the official Catholic directory. So what does that mean, not having that conversation? How can we quantify the opportunity cost lost from just not having that conversation? On the right is a little worksheet. Everyone can do this for themselves using their own diocese, but take the number of Catholics, and we're doing it here for Tyler. Take the number of Catholics that passed in 2019. Assume it'll happen in 2020, and there in that 2-year span, you'll have 694 folk that pass away. Based on some historical giving numbers and other data, the 10%, if approached, would be people that might be interested to make a bequest, especially if it was easy and they were approached in the right way. And if you could quantify that, the average kind of gift is about 100 for bequests is about 162,000 based on our research and experience. So that ends 69 people passing at $162,000. You're looking at possibly, even for a small diocese like Tyler, an opportunity cost of $11 million. Now, what can we do with $11 million? I think you have ideas. It seems like a kind of a shame, and at least there's a guy on the phone, Mark Henry, who actually saw that opportunity and did something about it. Now, nobody wants to lose $11 million. But you also think that you might have to be a plan giving expert in order to go have this discussion. And I think we're going to show you that that's not the case. Now, what Mark did, and we're going to ask Mark to tell us a little bit about it, is he saw the same effect, and he went ahead, and this is all pre-COVID, but he did basically a classic planned giving campaign. And we'll let Mark tell you a little bit about how we went about that. But I want to also point out, we're going to show you after this that there's even an easier way for people to do it than someone who's got a JD after their name and has kind of been doing planned giving for a while. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about your program in Tyler?
Well, like everyone else, we were very concerned about the fact that donors were passing away and we weren't getting to them in time to ask them for bequests. And so we, basically took a multi-pronged approach. We started the communication. We started asking using different media. It was both through published media, articles in a magazine, materials that we put into parish bulletins, and actually face-to-face presentations that we did.
So I think we've lost Mark there, and we'll go on to the next slide.
People were hungry for it. They really wanted to have a conversation. So it was long overdue, but it was something that, we took a targeted approach. We do things like webinars, we do things like email campaigns and actual asks to different size groups, both in smaller groups as well as parish presentations. And so
let's move to this slide, which is
16
how to get started with it. And we'll pick back up with Mark when we get there. Now, Mark, I'm on to the next slide, which is anyway where we're going to talk about how you did it. How anyone can do this is you start with the existing self-identified planned giver list. Now, Mark was telling you about kind of a more elaborate planned giving campaign and a full out, from 0 to 60 campaign. But everybody on this call can do it in a much simpler, more targeted way. There's an easier way to get started that we're going to show you. Is just start with your existing self-identified giver list. That's what we recommend. And close a single charitable gift annuity. That's what we recommend. Now, what do you mean by my existing list? I don't have a list. Well, yes, you all do. I call it, at a minimum, there's your common knowledge gift. We need to put these names on a sheet of paper. The ones that are on your board that say, well, you're already in my will, or they've made it aware that that's the case. There's also some handy existing lists you have of self-identified people. One example is after a CAP campaign, Steyer Group and others often, or during the feasibility study stage, actually surveyed the donors, and one of the questions is, will you be willing or have you made a planned gift? And oftentimes it's yes, we've already made one, or we're willing to do that. Start with these lists is step one. And then try this out. In this environment, try closing a charitable gift annuity we recommend as a first step. It's a way to prove concept, get some papers in place, and certainly it'll more than cover your program cost. And as you see from our goal here, which I think is achievable by everyone on this phone, is it's another $200,000 per year on this goal, and I think out in the field. Now, the second thing is if you get some traction and you think actually maybe you'd like to expand your list, there's the proven methods that Mark was discussing that have already been done. You can use these to expand the list. Now you've already got some momentum. It's things like webinars such as this that just play into that concern amongst certain people about the medical concerns, the medical directive. So there's certain type of topics that you can do by way of webinar. We found that emails can be successful, say emails to your top 5% list of givers, talking about free medical directive or consultation. You can even do something as simple as an email or a phone survey where the question is, have you made a gift or are you interested in making an estate gift to the diocese? You'd be surprised. A lot of people will say from a survey like that, you're already in our estate. And they're open to further discussion. So you can build the list, and then you can even add type of things Mark did into. You can move to the big lifts with some donor gatherings and some living legacy events, but it's not critical to get started. Anyway, the second step here is to expand the list of self-identified prospects. Now, the third step we're going to show on the next slide, and that's kind of the key to all this. It's going to lead to donors willingly wanting to have a discussion with you with their balance sheet about the best gifts and the best assets to use to fund them. But now the step 4 here, we could say Julius Capital and Immacul.aw are available to you to help as little as you need or as much, and you can figure it out as you go. Some people have used just to do basic training. To get an idea, a little bit better idea of these gifts and who might be the best prospects for them, and then they can maybe run with it on their own. We can also help with marketing or doing some webinars or other things such as this. The big thing, though, that I think we might be most helpful about is that balance sheet review we'll talk about at the next slide, where we can share with you the out-of-towner effect. Of course, there's also there is some back office and some legal that we can help with you. So we could work, if you need it, to help bolster kind of your plan giving bench, so to speak. Now, this really is probably the most important slide of the whole talk in terms of leading to a planned gift. This is the balance sheet review step. After a donor has self-identified as being interested and having a preliminary discussion, this is the step where they say, hey, let's collaboratively look at your balance sheet, and we're going to probably be able to identify some tax savings for you and just the best gifts that you'll use to fund this. For example, you might sell something earning 1% and you buy one of the 5% yielding gifts we have here. Now, the top effect of this is, I wanted to say there's something magical about an out-of-town consultant, and it kind of makes sense. It's called the out-of-towner effect for these estate giving kind of consultations. Is we found donors are your donors very, very open to really sharing this information, and more open than ever with an out-of-towner who's an expert. And it's obvious they don't necessarily feel comfortable sharing information with their neighbor. Sometimes they feel the communities are small, but under confidentiality and it's set up in the right way, they'll be very, very open to an out-of-town estate gift consultant, and somewhere that we could help you at this step. I want to ask Mark to kind of, this is something Mark's been doing for years, but Mark, explain what happens when you have a donor, and how does it work once a donor wants to have this kind of step? And what's the effect of being an out-of-towner when you're having this meeting?
Donors, of course, prefer confidentiality. They don't want the guy sitting across the pew on Sunday knowing their financial situation. So there's just this dynamic at play. They prefer to work with people who they're not going to run into on Sundays. And so that's an important criteria. But this tool right here, the organizer, it's literally a fundraising goldmine. It really is. And it's something that about this. It's just something that people who are getting their estate planning done, they're used to using this type of a tool. So there's nothing extraordinary about it, but what is unusual is the way we can use this as a tool in order to develop more structured gifts. It really shows for the first time the capacity that donors have, not just to leave a bequest, but also to have a big impact on the parish and the diocese now through structured gifts like charitable gift annuities and church bonds?
The fruit of this meeting oftentimes is certain assets are ideal. And I say, you see the red arrow there, appreciated securities or securities that are earning a low yield are ideal kind of assets to either be sold or used in structured gifts. And we're going to kind of walk through this. But, remember, people are starved for yield. So the low-hanging fruit is selling something in their portfolio that's yielding not very much, like a bank CD, or even 10-year treasuries are under 1% now. Selling something like that and possibly purchasing one of the estate gifts we have to offer, either the charitable gift annuity, the CGA, or the donor bond charitable remainder trust, the donor bond CRUT. Here's a little bit of highlight of what those two gifts are. It's at a high level. Remember, the win-win here is donors get enhanced yield when they buy these gifts, plus possibly, and in each case, they get a tax deduction to boot. For the charity, they fund a funding gap more immediately than any other kind of planned gift. The simplest and the one that we recommend starting with, everyone having it in their repertoire, is the reinsured charitable gift annuity. Now, we're going to explain the reinsured part of it, but basically this gift yields 5 to 7%. It's based on the donor's age. The older they are, the higher the yield. We find the average investment size that the donor would fund with this kind of thing can range from $50,000 to $250,000, but there's no reason it can't be substantially larger, but they tend to be in this range. With this gift, the reinsured version of it, the charity nets 25% immediate use. Ideal prospects are donors age 70 plus. And if they've purchased a charitable annuity before, it even is simpler. This form is simple to document and explain. It's much like a donor pledge, essentially, charitable gift and annuity agreement. It's like a pledge agreement. There's a few challenges we can help you with. The reinsured part of it requires the purchase of a single premium immediate annuity with an insurance company. And there is a little bit of back office. Basically, this can be done almost by anyone very quickly, and it is basically not a high maintenance type of a gift. Now, contrasting that to our second option, which is the donor bond charitable remainder unit trust, or the donor bond CRUT, this yields 5 to 5.5%. You can see the average investment size here. The bigger money, remember our goal for this instrument in this campaign was $6 million over 5 years, is the size can be much bigger. You can, we tend to see 100,000 to, it could be $1 million or $2. That would be attractive with this kind of gift. And in this case, unlike the CGA, is that the charity nets 100% of that donor bond. And so this is why this can produce more money quicker and at larger sizes. Ideal prospects here aren't just elderly, it's balance sheet rich folks with a big balance sheet. And especially if they've got, I mean, that's nice. If they have a big balance sheet with some low yielding things in there, like fixed income, that's great. But if they have appreciated securities, that's even an extra boost for this, because there are some tremendous tax advantages related to this gift. Challenges is this is more complicated. You will need some help, and the donor bonds would need to be created, and we'll show you that part of it as we get farther into the presentation. So through here in section 4, the reinsured charitable gift annuity, and break it down for you. Most people have heard about the charitable gift annuity, and if you're like me, most people don't have a pleasant memory of them. because you're remembering the traditional charitable gift annuity has a lot of problems with it. In fact, we don't recommend to anyone that you do a traditional charitable gift annuity. In this case, that's the diocese typically bearing all of the risk of the charitable gift annuity. And I've laid them out for you here, especially the longevity risk and investment risk is people have experience, and it's backed up by actuarial data, is that people who buy charitable gift annuities tend to live longer than your average person. And you could be paying out that 5% for a very long time if you're basically bearing the risk yourself. Also, you have to be able to invest that money at a higher rate, and you can see what happens when yields go down. So there's a lot of risk with longevity and investment risk. Also, the donor has charity risk. If there's some solvency of the diocese, an issue, they could have a bad CGA. So add that to the list. And if that weren't bad enough, you can't use it for current needs because you need to basically reserve for it and wait for the person to pass. And there's a lot of back office to it. So the traditional charitable gift annuity we find unattractive and, in fact, risky to offer. Now, contrast that with the reinsured charitable gift annuity that we recommend. It solves these problems essentially by offloading onto the insurance company the risks we have there and also making it safer for the donor. So let's just click through those same kind of factors. In this case, the key to make a reinsured charitable gift annuity is that it is a big insurance company that is providing the annuity. And that's a single premium immediate annuity is purchased, and that produces the payments to the donor. And the charity is basically involved in finding the gift in the donor and putting it together with the insurance company in this package. So in this way, you reduce longevity. The longevity risk and the investment risk is now off with the longevity and investment risk is now off onto the insurance company. The charity solvency risk as well, and the current needs the big problem is solved in that you can use these proceeds immediately. Back office hassles are also reduced because a lot of that is offloaded onto the insurance company. So let's now look at how you get started with this program. And you call it a program, but Reinsured CGA program can start with a single CGA could be your program. So you can do these one at a time and see if you like it, and that's one way to get started. If you feel like it's attractive, it also can be a way that you can pool your existing traditional charitable gift annuities and basically move that risk over to the insurance company. So you can do Reinsured CGA program either on an individual or a pooled basis. Let's now talk about what really happens. In this example, we have donors, and they have $100,000 to invest in this example. And what they'd like to receive is $5,000 per year for life, for the longest of the two to live. So this is a perfect use for a charitable gift annuity, but in particular, and that's basically, you see step 3 there is the donors receiving $5,000 a year for life from the insurance company. Now, how do we get there? Step 1 is the charity donor, the diocese basically offers the $100,000 charitable gift annuity to the donors. And that's kind of evidenced by a charitable gift annuity agreement. But simultaneously with that, the diocese is purchasing a single premium immediate annuity from the insurance company. So essentially, the difference between the cost of that annuity and the $100,000 the diocese receives is the amount they net. In this example, it's $26,000. So we tend to use 25% as the amount that the donor nets. Now, Mark has been very successful in using these in his Tyler program. And, Mark, tell us a little bit about donor receptivity and the size of the CGA, that the Reinsured CGA that you've been able to do in Tyler.
Well, I wish we started this a long time ago. We're so encouraged by the initial results, and with low interest rates and market volatility, CGAs just kind of occupy a sweet spot out there in terms of investment alternatives for donors. And we've started the conversation about 4 months ago. We've booked some very, very large CGAs, and we're on track to cover our department's entire operating budget with just a few initial CGAs. And, of course, what we're talking about here are gifts that the donors really are excited about. They like being able to go from a 1% interest rate up to 5, 6, 7, 8%, sometimes 9%. And so donors are very receptive about this. And we're very encouraged. I wish we would have started it much earlier, but Julius Capital has been very helpful in terms of how we position this with donors, which donors are interested in CGAs, which donors are interested in charity bonds. But I couldn't recommend this strategy any higher. And the fact that we are shifting the risk to an outside insurance company really makes a big deal, and it's something that administration here at the diocese is really excited about.
So that's CGA, and we think it's a necessary part.
Let me just jump in with a quick question from a participant on the Reinsured CGA, and the question is: have these been around for a while? Are they time tested, or are they a relative innovation? How new are they?
They have been. There's nothing new about this. It really is rather uncommon in terms of the number of dioceses that are using this, because a lot of dioceses did it the old-fashioned way, and they have to absorb the risk, and they have older, CGA purchasers who live into their 90s and 100s even. And so the traditional CGA has left a sour taste in the mouth of many organizations, and the Reinsured CGA, which enables you to basically pocket a large percentage of the CGA up front. I'm not sure why it hasn't caught on with every diocese, but that's one of the reasons for this webinar, to show these new and exciting strategies. But it is time tested and it has been used previously by a number of dioceses. But even more than that, outside of the Catholic Church world, it's a very commonly used strategy.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
So let's move on to the Donor Bond Charitable Remainder Unit Trust, the Donor Bond CRUT. Now, this is something that has not been around. Unlike the CGA, these two ideas are more recently put together by our firms, but they are being used up field, the Donor Bond CRUT, and it's working well. It's just not, it doesn't have as long of a history. So let's try to kind of, and I'm going to move through here, quickly hitting the high points. With the traditional charitable remainder trust, the big problem is you do not receive the corpus from the charitable remainder trust until the donor passes. So it's a remainder interest. That is the gift. The donor receives some income for life for a term of years, say 5%, and the corpus is then turned to the charity named beneficiary upon the donor's death. That's one problem, is you need to wait a long time for the money, and there's not really kind of there's no certainty about when you can start using the funds. Second is that these type of agreements are they can be complicated, and they're controlled by the donor's tax attorneys and the investment advisors, and they're very hard to penetrate or have influence over if you're coming into an existing charitable remainder trust. And oftentimes there's several charities already named. And so it's not your instrument. It's not the equivalent of like your own pledge agreement. Now, the donor bond charitable remainder trust, on the other hand, it flips those around. First point is the charity, the diocese would receive the proceeds at initial formation, up front, not upon donor's death. what happens on the donor's death is that that bond is donated back and forgiven. The second point is that this is an instrument that the diocese is the diocese is crafting the agreement. It's much simpler and it's targeted for the needs of the diocese and the donor. But this is basically your own form of gift agreement, much like an individual charitable gift annuity that you might do. So that's what the donor bond CRUT is: proceeds up front, and in a more controlled agreement. Now the thing is, you need to have what we call donor bonds to do this idea. So let's talk about that next. What's a donor bond and how do I get them? So a donor bond is simply a bond issued by the diocese, or your foundation can issue these too. And it's a public bond, which means it can be held, it can be purchased by any donor, doesn't have to be an accredited investor, and it can be held in their fidelity account, in their brokerage statement. That's what a public bond is. It also can be sold off. It can be purchased in as small as $5,000 increments. We tend to use much bigger increments than that, but it actually has a way that it can be resold because it's public and it can be sold in increments. It'll come the donor's brokerage statements or their trust or their corporation or whatever they're buying the bond with. And now the easiest, most effective way to make and get access to donor bonds is to just hitch on to another financing that you're already doing. You would need to basically contemplate this in advance, but we build all at Immacul.aw and Julius Capital, we build and design all of our credit facilities, namely any borrowing a school or diocese would be doing, would basically get this capability just welded into it, kind of as the upfront thought, and it's available kind of along with any financing. That's the very easiest way to get this. So we're going to go through an example here of a school that did in Diocese of Austin that just recently completed a financing. In that case, you can see the brown shaded part is we were able to obtain with our partner Coughlin and Company a tax-exempt bond for $19 million of proceeds. It was used to repay a diocesan deposit and loan, an existing loan, and also to provide $6 million of new construction funds. So that's the use of the first $19 million. But notice the yellow. At the same time, we also permitted under this credit facility the issuance for additional borrowing for these donor bonds that can be offered over time. Maybe as donors commit, they can be taken off the shelf, so to speak. And so there's $6 million of donor bond capacity available for use for this diocese going forward. And they could use those proceeds to even repay the tax-exempt bond, or also for any other use that they would want. So that's the $6 million, that's the yellow shaded. Now the next slide will give you an idea of how, pictorially, about how the situation, the rates and maturities. So a bond has a maturity. It may mature in 1 year, or it may be a long bond that matures in 30 years. That's when the principal must be repaid. So this is basically a series of bonds that you can see from this maturity ladder that you can have short maturity. You can see from the maturities of year 1 to 15. Here are the brown shaded tax exempt bond that was purchased by a bank. That's the traditional bank loan portion of this. And that was, you can see, a very attractive loan of a 1.97% interest rate, and it had principal maturing as shown on the schedule over time. Now, secondly, you can see the yellow bond is unissued donor bonds we're talking about, and they're the longer maturing bonds with the interest rates between 4.5% and 5.5%. And this is the inventory we're using for the donor bond charitable remainder trust. When this bond is sold, the yellow, the diocese or the school would get these proceeds at the formation of the charitable remainder trust. So this is the inventory we're using in this example. Now, how does it work? So knowing we have that inventory, say we now have an 80-year-old donor, and they also want to invest $100,000, and they'd like to earn 5% for life. You can get to the same spot with this example using a donor bond CRUT as we used with our CGA example. And it will result in the donor getting $5,000 per year for life. Now, the big difference here is that when you use the donor bond CRUT, recall that the diocese or the school will get to use 100% of the proceeds of that bond, all 100% upon initial formation, as opposed to just 25% of the proceeds with the CGA. So it's a bit of the sausage making here is broken down by steps, but how it works is the donor puts up $100,000. They need first, they've identified an asset that's low yielding, in this case, $100,000, 1% yielding CD. So that donor will sell that 1% CD and contribute cash into a charitable remainder trust account. It's a separate brokerage account with a charitable remainder trust agreement. Because the IRS recognizes this as an irrevocable gift, the donor will also receive a charitable deduction upon formation, in this case, $67,000 charitable deduction. Step two is that money's now in the trust. That trust will buy one of those donor bonds from the school. A $100,000 donor bond will be sold by the school, and that yields the $100,000 for the school to use right then. Now the school then pays the 5% interest on that, and you see in every year in step three, the donor gets the 5% distribution from the charitable remainder unit trust. Finally, in step four, which what makes this not true debt, is the agreement provides that any charitable remainder trust provides that whatever is the corpus will be distributed to the named beneficiary at the end, and that is the school in this case. So basically in step four, when the donor passes, the bond is distributed back to the school, who can then cancel the bond, or they can even use that same bond to use for another gift. They could use it over and resell it to another donor. So bottom line is that the donor receives 5% for life. A very, even in the simple case here, a very nice tax deduction. And I'll leave it for another discussion, but there are either additional tax benefits if this donor were to have chosen to fund their charitable remainder trust with an appreciated security. And we know when you donate appreciated securities, much like your normal donation of an appreciated security, the donors are able to escape the gain on that and still earn this tax deduction. So there are tax deductions available here for the donors, but driving it is the same thing having both these gifts. People would rather earn in this environment 5% for life than 1. And those are kind of the assets we're looking to convert. So I know we're nearing the end of our time, but I would want to ask David if there are any other questions that are still remaining in the crowd.
Yes, Michael, there's just a couple about the bonds that you've described. First question related to what sort of collateral might there be for these bonds? What sort of security securing the bonds? And a second question about whether these bonds are ever rated by a rating agency.
Great questions. So there, the answer is that you can create different flavors of bonds, and they vary by who actually is the bond issuer. So in this case, this is a school. This example, if it's a school bond, in 99% of the time we see it's most attractive that it's a mortgage on this bond to make it safe. The issue about whether, and then I would say some of them are a mortgage, and depending on the strength of the school, they may be guaranteed or not guaranteed by the diocese. So that's a flavor of school bond. The second bond is when the diocese is issuing, it's a different story. So in that case, we often see that the diocese is issuing not a mortgage bond, but a general obligation bond of the diocese. And is much like the school bond, then they have an option of that as a rated bond or unrated. So we've recently completed an unrated bond for the Diocese of the Catholic Diocese of Austin, and they chose to have it unrated. It didn't basically matter in that case to sell it. In the Diocese of Phoenix chose in a deal we recently just closed this month to get their bond rated. And that's really a matter of whether the strength is enough to get the bond rated, and whether it results in a low benefit in terms of the rate. So they're all around the board, David, but generally school bonds are mortgage, and diocese bonds are general obligations.
Thank you.
Well, I think we're at the end of our time. But I wanted to make sure that everyone on the call knows that we are going to make the slides available and this talk, and also just complimentary consultations are welcome. And there is a way on the website here you can actually click on the offers and schedule, or just feel free to give me a call at either of these numbers or send me an email, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today.
Great.
And we look forward to a chance to talk to you about this.